The first time Captain Daeho Kim heard the crystal song, he thought his ship's computer was broken. The sound came through the speakers like wind chimes in a storm, beautiful and desperate at the same time. He was drinking coffee in his captain's chair when the strange music filled the bridge of the UES Perseverance. "What is that?" he asked his communications officer. "Unknown signal, sir. It's coming from the Endosia system, about 12 light-years away. The computer can't make sense of it." Daeho set down his coffee and leaned forward. The Perseverance was a small patrol ship, nothing special. They were supposed to watch for pirates and smugglers near the edge of human space. They weren't supposed to find mysterious alien songs. "Can we clean it up?" "Working on it, sir." The music got clearer as his crew worked. Soon patterns emerged from the chaos. It wasn't just random noise. Someone was trying to talk. Someone was asking for help. "Get me Una Park," Daeho said. Now, Una Park was the ship's language expert. She could speak 7 human languages and had studied alien communication for years. When she arrived on the bridge, her eyes went wide at the sound. "This is incredible," she whispered. "It's harmonic language. Each tone carries meaning. They're using music to talk. Can you understand it?" Una listened for an hour, making notes and running the signal through her computers. When she finally turned around, her face was pale. "Captain, they're asking for help. Someone is destroying their world. They're dying." The message, when Una finally decoded it, was simple and terrible. A peaceful people called the Velrani were being wiped out. Their crystal cities were being eaten by raiders called the Korthak. Millions were dead. More would die soon. They had sent their cry for help to every corner of the galaxy. "Show me," Daeho said. The images that came with the message made everyone on the bridge go quiet. Beautiful cities made of living crystal were being torn apart by huge machines. The Velrani themselves looked like walking gemstones, their bodies made of clear, colored crystal that caught and reflected light. They were being hunted like animals. "How long do they have?" Daeho asked. "Maybe weeks," Una said. "Maybe less." Far away in the center of the galaxy, the great powers received the same message. The Zinthari Empire, proud and ancient, discussed the plea in their golden halls. Their leaders wore robes that cost more than most planets and spoke in voices that had commanded star systems for 1,000 years. "Another primitive species in trouble," said Ambassador Thex Moore. "We cannot interfere in every local conflict." "But they're being wiped out completely," said a younger Zinthari. "That is unfortunate, but not our concern. We have our own people to protect." The Mechlin Consortium, a collection of traders and merchants, saw no profit in helping. Their council met in a space station that was more shop than government building. "What can the Velrani offer us?" asked the trade master. "Crystal? We can mine crystal anywhere." "Why spend money saving them?" "Because it's right," suggested someone. The room filled with laughter. "Right doesn't pay for ships, crying," the trade master said. Even the mysterious void-touched beings, so advanced they barely seemed real anymore, ignored the message. They floated in their dark ships beyond the galaxy's edge and said nothing. Only humans seemed to care. Admiral Yoonji Choi commanded the small human fleet in that part of space. She was a tough woman who had fought pirates and explored unknown systems. When Daeho's report reached her, she read it 3 times. 12 ships, she said to her staff. "That's all we have in this sector." "Earth Command says we should stay out of it," said her aide. "They don't want to anger the big powers." "How many Velrani are there?" "Maybe 50 million, Admiral." Before the attack started, Yoonji stared at the star charts on her wall. 50 million people, an entire species, and the galaxy's great civilizations were going to let them die because it was inconvenient to help. "Get me Captain Kim," she said. When Daeho's face appeared on her screen, Yoonji could see the hope in his eyes. He wanted to help. She could tell. "Captain, I'm sending you coordinates. Take your ship to the Endosia system." Admiral Earth Command said, "Earth Command is 3 months away by message. By the time they tell us what to do, the Velrani will be dead. We're the only ones here. We're the only ones who can help." "What are your orders, Admiral?" Yoonji was quiet for a moment. She thought about her career, her future, her duty to humanity. Then she thought about 50 million crystal people singing their death songs into the empty galaxy. "Save them," she said. "However you can." 2 days later, the Perseverance jumped into the Endosia system. What Daeho saw there would stay with him forever. The planet Velros hung in space like a broken jewel. Half of it still gleamed with crystal cities that caught starlight and turned it into rainbows. The other half was gray and dead, stripped bare by the Korthak machines. Giant harvesting platforms hung in orbit, pulling up chunks of crystal the size of mountains. Korthak warships patrolled the system like sharks, and everywhere small ships fled the dying world, carrying refugees to anywhere they could find safety. "My God," whispered Yuna Park. Dr. Min-Ho Lee, the ship's doctor, watched the screens with tears in his eyes. "How many are down there?" "Millions," Daeho said. "And we're just one ship." As if in answer to his words, space around them filled with light as more ships arrived. Admiral Choi had sent everything she could, medical ships, transports, even a few warships to protect them. It wasn't much against the Korthak Empire, but it was what humanity had. "All ships, this is Admiral Choi," came the voice over the radio. "We're here to help. We're going to save as many as we can." The Korthak noticed them immediately. Warning messages filled the radio, telling the humans to leave or be destroyed. The nearest Korthak warship was 10 times bigger than anything in the human fleet. But Admiral Choi's voice never wavered. "We're staying," she broadcast to the Korthak ships. "We're here to help the Velrani, and we're not leaving." On the surface of Velros, crystal beings who had given up hope heard human voices speaking their language through Yuna Park's translations. The message was simple: "You are not alone. We have come to help." For the first time in months, the Velrani sang songs of hope instead of despair, and in the darkness of space, a small human fleet prepared to face an empire, because someone had to stand with the dying crystal people. The galaxy had turned its back on the Velrani, but humanity had come. The human fleet arrived at Velros to find a world dying in slow motion. Dr. Min-Ho Lee watched from the medical ship's windows as Korthak harvesters stripped away crystal formations that had grown for thousands of years. Each crystal they took was not just a building or a monument. It was a piece of living history, and a Velrani who would never return home. "Set up the field hospitals on the third moon," Dr. Min-Ho told his staff. "The Velrani refugees there need help fast." Dr. Hee-Won Jang, his partner in the medical team, had been studying the Velrani for days. What she found worried her. "Min-Ho, they're fading," she said. "The longer they stay away from their home crystals, the more confused they become. Some of them are forgetting their own names. The Velrani were not like humans. Their consciousness was connected to the crystal formations where they were born. When those crystals were destroyed or left behind, parts of their minds went with them. Children were the worst affected. Young Velrani who had been evacuated were becoming like empty shells, their crystal bodies clear and lifeless. "Can we help them?" Min-Ho asked. "Maybe, if we can grow small crystals for them to carry, but it's not the same as home." While the doctors worked to save lives, Captain Tae Young-song faced a different problem. His destroyer, the Incheon, was fast and well-armed for a human ship. But the Korthak had vessels that could crack moons. They moved through space like metal mountains, their weapons cutting through anything in their path. 3 more Korthak patrol ships incoming, reported his sensor officer. They're heading for the refugee convoy. Tae Young did quick math in his head. The refugee ships were slow and helpless. His destroyer could probably hurt the Korthak ships but not stop them. And if he died, who would protect the next convoy? "All power to engines," he ordered. "We're going to get between them and the refugees." The Incheon raced across space, its small human crew preparing for a fight they probably could not win. But they had to try. Behind them, transport ships full of crystal families fled toward the moons where the humans were building temporary camps. On the flagship, Commander Ji Woo-han studied battle reports and felt sick. The numbers were impossible. The Korthak Empire had millions of warriors spread across dozens of star systems. They had been conquering and eating worlds for centuries. The human fleet had 12 ships and a few thousand people. "We can't win a straight fight," she told Admiral Choi. "They're too strong." "Then we don't fight straight," the Admiral replied. "What do you need?" "Time. And we need to teach the Velrani to fight back." This was the hardest part. The Velrani had never known war. For their entire history they had been artists and philosophers, growing crystal gardens and singing mathematical songs to the stars. Violence was as foreign to them as breathing underwater was to humans. Speaker Krista 9, the leader of the Velrani, met with Admiral Choi through Yuna Park's translation. The crystal being's voice was like music, but sad music, like a song for the dead. "We do not understand fighting," Krista 9 sang. "How do we hurt others when our nature is to create?" Admiral Choi thought about this for a long time. How do you teach peace-loving people to fight for their lives? You don't fight to hurt. she finally said. You fight to protect. You fight so that your children can grow up to create beautiful things. You fight so that your songs don't die forever. Unipark translated, and Krista Nine's crystal body flickered with new light. For the first time, the Velrani leader seemed to understand. The training began immediately. Engineer Youngsu Nam worked with Velrani crystal growers to turn their peaceful art into weapons. Crystal barriers that could stop Korthak energy beams, crystal spikes that could pierce their armor, even crystal songs that could shatter their equipment. It's amazing, Youngsu told his team. They can grow crystal faster than we can make steel. If they learned to use it for defense, they might have a chance. But learning took time, and time was running out. The Korthak were getting angry about human interference. Their commanders sent messages demanding that the humans leave immediately. You are insects, said the Korthak war leader. Leave now, or we will crush you and take your worlds too. Earth Command, thousands of light years away, finally responded to Admiral Choi's reports. The message was not what she wanted to hear. Admiral, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. Do not engage the Korthak Empire. Return to human space at once. Admiral Choi read the message 3 times. Her own government was ordering her to abandon the Velrani. Politicians on Earth were worried that helping would anger the galaxy's great powers. They wanted humanity to stay small and quiet and safe. She called a meeting of all her ship captains. Some attended in person, others by video link from their ships scattered around the system. Earth Command wants us to leave, she told them simply. The room went quiet. Captain Tae-young spoke first. Admiral, if we leave, the Velrani die. All of them. I know. And if we stay, we're disobeying direct orders, said Captain Sang-wook Park from the cruiser Seoul. We could be court-martialed. Our careers would be over. I know that too. Dr. Minho leaned forward. Admiral, I've been working with their children. They're starting to remember things again when they hold the small crystals we're growing for them. They're getting better. If we leave now? He didn't finish the sentence. Everyone knew what would happen. Admiral Choi looked around the room at faces on screens and in person. These were good people. They had families back on Earth, dreams for the future, lives to live. She had no right to ask them to throw it all away for strangers. I'm not ordering anyone to stay, she said finally, but I'm not leaving. The Velrani asked the galaxy for help and everyone ignored them. Everyone except us. We're the only ones who answered their call. Captain Sang-wook shifted uncomfortably. Admiral, we're 12 ships against an empire. It's suicide. Maybe. But if we run away now, what does that say about humanity? What does that say about who we are? One by one, the captains made their choices. Captain Sang-wook took his ship and 2 others back toward human space. They were good people, but they had families to think about and orders to follow. 9 ships stayed. Captain Dae-ho Kim spoke for all of them when he said, "We came here to help. We're not leaving until the job is done or we can't do it anymore." Admiral Choi nodded. Then we'd better get to work. The Korthak response was swift and terrible. A massive fleet jumped into the system. Over 100 warships led by their most feared vessels, the Devastator-class planet crackers. Their message was simple: surrender or die. Standing on the bridge of her flagship, Admiral Choi looked out at enemy ships that outnumbered hers 10-1. Each Korthak vessel was bigger and stronger than anything humanity had ever built. In any reasonable universe, this would be the end of the story. But Admiral Choi had learned something about humanity during her years in space. Humans were not reasonable. When someone needed help, they helped. When someone was in danger, they stood between them and that danger, even when it was stupid, even when it was hopeless. All ships, and she broadcast to her tiny fleet, prepare for battle. We're not backing down. On the surface of Velros, Velrani refugees looked up at the sky and saw the lights of warships preparing to fight. For their sake, a handful of humans were about to face an empire. The crystal beings had no words in their musical language for what they felt. But if they had, those words would have been gratitude, hope, and love. Admiral Yoonji Choi stood alone in her quarters, staring at the message from Earth Command. The orders were clear: withdraw immediately or face court-martial. Outside her window, Korthak warships moved like dark stars against the void, each one capable of destroying everything she had brought to save the Velrani. She thought about her daughter on Earth, about the career she had built over 20 years, about the comfortable retirement she would never see now. Then she thought about Krista Nine, the Velrani leader who sang lullabies. to refugee children to help them remember their names. The choice was not really a choice at all. She opened a channel to every human ship and every Velrani receiver in the system. When she spoke, her voice was calm and steady. This is Admiral Choi of the United Earth Fleet. 3 hours ago, I received orders to abandon the Velrani people and return to human space. I am refusing those orders. The words hung in the static-filled air of a dozen ship bridges. We came to the stars not to repeat the mistakes of our past, but to become better than we were. We came to help those who needed help, to stand with those who stood alone. The Velrani will not die alone. We will not abandon them to save ourselves. Captain Sang-Wook Park's face appeared on her screen from the cruiser Seoul. His expression was pained. Admiral, I understand what you're trying to do, but this is madness.
We can't fight the entire Korthak Empire. No one is forcing you to stay, Captain. I have 300 crew members.
I have families to think about. I know. Take your ships and go with my blessing. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them why we stayed. 3 ships left that day. The Seoul, along with 2 escort vessels, jumped away toward human space. Admiral Choi watched them go without anger. They were making the smart choice, the safe choice. She could not blame them for choosing life over a hopeless gesture. But 9 ships remained. 9 small human vessels against the might of an empire. Engineer Young-Soo Nam had been working with the Velrani for weeks now, learning their crystal-growing techniques. What he discovered amazed him. The Velrani could shape crystal like humans shaped clay, growing structures that were stronger than steel, and could channel energy in ways human science barely understood. Look at this, he told Commander Ji Woo-han, showing her a crystal formation that pulsed with inner light. They can grow a defensive barrier in minutes. It can stop Korthak energy weapons completely. Can they grow them fast enough? Ji Woo asked. That's the problem. Each crystal takes time and concentration. In a real battle, show me what you mean. Young-Soo led her to a training area where Velrani were learning to fight. Kristinine was there, her crystal body now marked with new growths that looked almost like armor. Beside her, young Velrani practiced growing crystal spikes and barriers. It was heartbreaking to watch. These beings had never heard anything in their lives. Their culture was built on creation, on growing beautiful things that would last forever. Now they were learning to make weapons, and every lesson hurt them in ways that went deeper than physical pain. We try to understand, Kristinine sang to Jiwoo through Unipark's translation. But to create for destruction feels wrong in our cores. You're not creating for destruction, Jiwoo replied. You're creating for life, for the chance that your children will grow up to make beautiful things again. The training continued, but slowly, too slowly. The Korthak were massing their forces for a final assault. Their devastator fleet had arrived. Massive ships designed to crack planets open like eggs. The lead ship alone was larger than the entire human fleet combined. The Korthak commander, war leader Thek Moore, sent one final message to the humans. You have 1 day to surrender. After that, we will destroy your ships and harvest your bodies along with the crystal singers. Your species will learn what happens to insects that interfere with Korthak business. Admiral Choi's reply was broadcast across the system. We're not going anywhere. Dr. Minho Lee and Dr. Hyewan Jung had been working day and night in the medical stations. They had saved thousands of Velrani refugees, but for everyone they saved, 10 more needed help. The children were the hardest cases. Young crystal beings who had lost so much of their connection to home that they barely seemed alive. We need more time, Hyewan told Minho. The crystal fragments were growing help them remember, but they need weeks to fully recover, not days. We may not have weeks, Minho replied, looking at the tactical displays that showed Korthak ships moving into attack formation. On the bridge of the Perseverance, Captain Dae-ho Kim studied the battle plans Jiwoo had created. They were clever, using the crystal caves and formations of Velros to hide human ships and launch surprise attacks. But clever could only do so much against overwhelming force. Sir, his communications officer said, we're getting a transmission from Earth. The face that appeared on screen was Fleet Admiral Kyung-Soo Yoon, the highest-ranking officer in the human fleet. His expression was grim. Captain Kim, I'm speaking to you because Admiral Choi is not responding to our calls. You need to convince her to withdraw immediately. The Zenthari Empire has lodged formal protests about human interference. The Meklon Consortium is threatening trade sanctions. This situation is spiraling out of control. Dae-ho looked at the Admiral's tired face on the screen. This man had probably not slept in days, dealing with political pressure from Earth's allies and enemies alike. "Sir, with respect, the Velrani are going to die if we leave. Captain, 50 million Velrani against the future of humanity in galactic politics. The math is simple, is it?" Deho asked. "What kind of future do we have if we let genocide happen because it's inconvenient to stop it?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "Captain, you're a good officer. Don't throw your life away on a gesture." "It's not a gesture, sir. It's who we are." The transmission ended and Deho knew that Earth would send no help. Humanity's leaders had decided that survival was more important than conscience. But the humans in the Andocia system had made a different choice. The first major battle began at dawn on Velros, if dawn meant anything in space. The Korthak came in waves, testing human defenses and looking for weaknesses. Captain Tae Young-song's destroyer Incheon led the defense, darting between crystal formations and striking at Korthak scouts. "They're probing our lines," he reported to Admiral Choi, "trying to figure out how we're hiding our ships." The crystal caves were perfect for guerrilla warfare. Human ships could duck inside formations that blocked Korthak sensors, then emerge to attack and disappear again. The Velrani had learned to reshape the crystals quickly, opening and closing passages for human vessels. But the Korthak learned quickly too. They began targeting the crystal formations themselves, destroying the human hiding places with massive energy blasts. "We're losing our cover," reported Tactical Officer Soo-Jin Lim. "They're blasting every crystal formation large enough to hide a ship." The battle intensified when a convoy of refugee ships tried to escape to the outer system. The Korthak moved to intercept them, sending 3 cruisers after the defenseless transports. Captain Dae-ho Kim saw the threat and made a decision that would haunt the survivors forever. He pushed the Perseverance to maximum speed, racing to get between the Korthak ships and the refugees. "Sir, we can't take on 3 cruisers," his weapons officer said. "We don't have to win," Dae-ho replied. "We just have to slow them down." The Perseverance struck the lead Korthak cruiser like a missile, ramming into its side at full speed. The explosion lit up space like a new star. Both ships died together, but the refugee convoy escaped. Dae-ho's last message reached Admiral Choi as his ship broke apart. "Tell them we kept faith. 50,000 Velrani refugees lived because one human captain chose to die for them. But the cost was becoming unbearable. The human fleet was down to 8 ships and the real battle had not even begun." That night, as both sides prepared for the final assault, Admiral Choi walked through the refugee camps on Velros's moons. Velrani families huddled together, their crystal bodies dim with grief and fear. Children sang quiet songs their parents had taught them, trying to remember who they were. Christinine found her there, standing among the tents and makeshift shelters. "Why do you do this?" the Velrani leader asked. "Your people are dying for ours. We do not understand." Admiral Choi was quiet for a long time, watching a human medic help a crystal child who had forgotten how to make her body glow. "Because someone has to," she finally said. "Because if we don't stand for each other, we stand for nothing." Tomorrow would bring the Korthak's final assault. Tomorrow the last human ships would face an empire's fury. But tonight, in the camps of refugees and the halls of crystal cities, 2 species stood together against the dark. And in that standing together, something new was born. Not just an alliance, but an idea. The idea that strength was not about how hard you could hit, but about how much you were willing to sacrifice for others. The galaxy was about to learn what that idea could do. The news traveled faster than starships. Across the galaxy, on space stations and colony worlds, in government halls and merchant districts, people were talking about the humans at Velros, not because of any great victory. The human fleet was losing badly, but because they were still fighting. Dr. Seung-hwan, Earth's cultural attaché on the neutral world of Nexus Prime, had never expected to become the center of galactic attention. His job was usually boring, organizing cultural exchanges, translating human art for alien audiences, attending diplomatic dinners where nothing important happened. Now his office was flooded with visitors. "We want to help," said Ambassador Kelleseven of the Aquari, her amphibious features glistening under the station's lights. "The humans stand for something we thought was dead in this galaxy." The Aquari had been conquered by the Zenthari Empire 300 years ago. They were allowed to govern themselves, but everyone knew who really made the decisions. They had learned to keep their heads down and avoid trouble. Until now. My government will deny this meeting ever happened, Kayla 7 continued. But there are ships full of medical supplies leaving for the Andosia system tonight. They will have navigation errors that take them near Velros. Dr. Shung Huan stared at her. You're risking war with the Zenthari. We are risking freedom. Finally, similar meetings were happening across the station. The Chitauri, insectoid beings enslaved by the Mechlon Consortium as living computers, sent a representative who spoke in careful, precise tones. We have accessed Korthak military communications. The Chitauri ambassador clicked. We will share this intelligence with your fleet commanders. The Mechlon believe we are too simple to understand rebellion. They are wrong. Even species Dr. Sung Hwan had never heard of came forward. The Thalari, who sang to crystals much like the Velrani did. The Corvin, tree shepherds from the forest worlds. Dozens of minor species who had been ignored or exploited by the great powers for centuries. Why now? Sung Hwan asked one delegation. Why are you all willing to take these risks? The answer came from an elderly Fen diplomat, his scaled features marked with the scars of old battles. Because for the first time in 1,000 years, someone showed us that caring is not weakness. Your people are dying for strangers. If that is not worth supporting, then nothing is. Back on Earth, the political situation was chaos. Fleet Admiral Kyung Soo-yoon found himself facing protests outside Earth Defense Headquarters every day. Crowds carried signs demanding that Earth send reinforcements to Admiral Choi. Videos from Velros played on every news network. Human medics treating crystal children. Human engineers teaching Velrani to build defenses. Human ships facing impossible odds. The footage that broke through the noise came from Dr. Hai Wanjiang's medical station. She had been recording her work with Velrani refugees for scientific purposes. But one video spread across human space like wildfire. It showed a young Velrani child, her crystal body barely larger than a human hand, learning to sing again with the help of a small crystal fragment Dr. Hewan had grown for her. The child's song was simple, just a few notes about remembering home. But when the video reached Earth, something changed. The child's crystal body glowed brighter as she sang, and in that light, people saw something that made them understand why Admiral Choi had chosen to stay. They saw innocence. They saw hope. They saw someone worth saving. The protest grew larger. Earth's parliament was flooded with messages demanding action. The government tried to explain that sending help would anger the galaxy's great powers. But nobody wanted to hear about politics when children were dying. Send the fleet, demanded Senator Kim Yuna during a heated parliamentary session. Send everything we have, and start a war with the Zenthari, replied Prime Minister Lee Dong-min. Risk humanity's future for one system? What future do we have if we abandon our principles the moment they become inconvenient? The debate raged for days while at Velros the siege tightened. The galactic powers were watching too. Ambassador Thexmore of the Zenthari Empire stood before his council in their golden towers, his flowing robes marking him as one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The humans refuse to withdraw, he reported. Their defiance is spreading to our subject species. The Aquari have become restless. Even some of our own officers are questioning our decision not to help. Young species often act foolishly, replied Zenthari Prime Keltaran, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. This will pass. Will it? The humans have been broadcasting their stand across the galaxy. Others are beginning to ask why we allow genocide when we have the power to stop it. In the council chamber, younger Zenthari officers shifted uncomfortably. They had grown up hearing stories of their empire's great honor, of how they protected civilization against the chaos of space. But what honor was there in letting innocents die? Commander Kethval, one of their finest young officers, finally spoke. My ancestors conquered the galaxy to bring order and justice. Where's the justice in abandoning the Velrani? Silence, ordered the Prime. We do not interfere in primitive conflicts, but the seed of doubt had been planted. In barracks and officers' clubs across the Zenthari fleet, soldiers began asking uncomfortable questions about honor and duty. The Mechlon Consortium faced different problems. Trade Captain Vex 9 stood before their ruling council on the great merchant station of Prophet's End, her multiple arms gesturing at holographic profit charts. The humans are disrupting trade routes, she reported. Several species are refusing to deal with us until we take action about the Velrani situation. Ridiculous, scoffed Trademaster Gulfor. "What do minor species matter? They matter because they buy our goods. The Aquari alone account for 12% of our biological technology sales. The Chitauri process data for half our navigation computers. If they unite against us," the council chamber fell silent. The Mechlon understood profit and loss better than anyone. If minor species started working together instead of depending on the great powers, the entire economic structure of the galaxy could change. Perhaps, Vex 9 continued carefully, it would be profitable to ensure a diverse, thriving galactic community rather than one dominated by fear. At Velros, the effects of this galactic attention were beginning to show. Korthak communications stolen by brave Chitauri rebels reached Commander Ji Wuhan's tactical station. Supply ships with navigation errors brought medical equipment and replacement parts for human vessels. Most importantly, the siege was no longer happening in isolation. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Park So-young, "we're getting messages from across the galaxy, offers of help, intelligence, supplies. Even some Zenthari officers are sending private communications of support." Admiral Choi read through the messages with wonder. Letters from school children on distant worlds. Military officers expressing admiration for the human stand. Refugees from old wars thanking humanity for showing that someone still cared. But the most important message came from Dr. Xunghwan Oh on Nexus Prime. "Admiral, you need to know. You're not fighting alone anymore. Something is building out here. The minor species are organizing. If you can hold on a little longer." The siege had become more than a battle for one world. It had become a test of what the galaxy believed in. Were they a community of species that helped each other, or a collection of self-interested empires that only cared about their own survival? Engineer Youngsu Nam noticed the change first. The Velrani were fighting differently now, not just defending themselves but working with his engineers to create new technologies. Hybrid weapons that combined human engineering with crystal-growing techniques. Defensive systems that neither species could have built alone. "Look at this," he showed Admiral Choi, pointing to a new type of energy cannon. "Human power systems, Velrani crystal focusing arrays. It's 3 times more effective than anything we've built before." The partnership was creating something new. Not just human technology or Velrani crystal work, but something that combined the best of both. When the next Korthak attack came, they would face weapons and defenses unlike anything they had seen before. Speaker Krista 9 had changed too. The peaceful crystal being now wore armor like crystal growths and carried herself with new confidence. She had learned that sometimes creation required destruction, that sometimes you had to fight to preserve what you loved. "We understand now," she told Admiral Choi through Unipark's translation. "Your people showed us that some things are worth fighting for. We will not forget this gift." The final battle was coming. Everyone could feel it. The Korthak were massing their largest ships, preparing to end the siege once and for all. But something else was building too. A coalition of the small, the forgotten, the oppressed. For the first time in galactic history, the minor species were beginning to speak with one voice. And what they were saying was simple: no more. The humans at Velros had lit a fire that was spreading across the stars. Soon the galaxy would have to choose which side of history it wanted to stand on. The age of looking away while atrocities happened was ending. The age of standing together was about to begin. The planet killer dropped out of hyperspace like a mechanical moon. The Korthak Devastator world render was larger than most space stations, its hull bristling with weapons designed to crack worlds open and harvest their cores. Its arrival above Velros cast shadows across the crystal cities that still sparkled on the planet's surface. Admiral Yoonji Choi stood on the bridge of her battered flagship, looking at sensor readings that made no sense. 8 human ships remained from her original fleet. The world render could destroy them all without slowing down. "How long until it's in firing position?" she asked. 12 hours, replied Commander Soo-Jin Lim, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Once it starts the cracking sequence, we'll have maybe 6 hours before the planet's core destabilizes." 12 hours. Admiral Choi thought about all the Velrani still on the surface, all the refugees in the moon camps, all the children Dr. Haiwan Jiang was helping to remember their names. 12 hours was not enough time to evacuate them all. "Ma'am," Communications Officer Park So-young called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Korthak flagship." The hologram that appeared showed War Leader Thekmor, His insectoid features twisted in what might have been amusement. Behind him, the bridge of his ship buzzed with activity as they prepared their ultimate weapon. "Human Admiral," Thekmore clicked. "You have fought well for insects. But this ends now. Surrender and we will allow your ships to leave before we crack this world. Refuse and you will die with the Crystal Singers." Admiral Choi looked around her bridge at faces she had come to know like family. Young officers who had volunteered to stay when they could have gone home. Engineers who had worked without sleep to keep their ships running. Medical officers who had saved thousands of lives. They were all looking at her, waiting for her answer. She thought about her daughter on Earth, about the comfortable life she could have if she just accepted defeat. Then she thought about Speaker Krista 9, who had learned to fight for her people. About Captain Dae-ho Kim, who had died to save a convoy of refugees. About the idea that someone somewhere had to stand up for what was right. "War Leader Thekmore," she said, her voice carrying to every ship in the system. "We came here to save lives. We're not leaving until that job is done." The Korthak leader's mandibles clicked in anger. "Then you will all die together. Begin the cracking sequence." The world render moved into position above Velros, its massive drilling apparatus extending toward the planet's surface. Energy readings spiked as the weapon powered up. On the planet below, crystal formations began to resonate with the ship's targeting systems, creating an eerie harmony that sounded like the world itself was singing a death song. In the human fleet, Captain Tae-young Song calculated firing solutions that would never work. His destroyer Incheon had maybe enough firepower to scratch the planet killer's paint. Engineer Young-soo Nam worked frantically to boost weapon output, knowing that even doubling their firepower would not be enough. Dr. Min-ho Lee prepared emergency medical stations, though there would be no survivors to treat once the planet cracked. On Velros's surface, Speaker Krista 9 stood in the largest remaining crystal cathedral. Her people gathered around her. They sang together, not songs of despair this time, but songs of gratitude. The humans had shown them that they were not alone in the universe. Even if they died today, they would die knowing that someone had cared enough to stand with them. 6 hours to primary firing sequence, reported the sensor officer. Admiral Choi opened a channel to every ship in her fleet and every Velrani receiver on the planet. If these were to be their last hours, there were things that needed to be said. All ships, all stations. This is Admiral Choi. In a few hours, the Korthak will try to destroy this world and everyone on it. We cannot stop them. Our ships are too few, our weapons too small. By any reasonable measure, we have failed. She paused, watching stars wheel past her bridge windows. But we did not come here to be reasonable. We came here because the Velrani asked for help, and nobody else answered. We came here because genocide should not happen while good people look away. We came here because someone has to stand up for what is right, even when it is hopeless. Her voice carried across space to crystal beings who had learned the meaning of courage, to human crews who had chosen principle over survival, to a galaxy that was listening with growing attention. We may die today, but our stand here has shown the galaxy something important. It has shown that there are still people willing to fight for others. It has shown that the strong do not always have to prey on the weak. It has shown that I was just following orders and it was not my responsibility, are not good enough anymore. On distant worlds, beings who had never heard of humans before were watching the broadcast. In government chambers and military headquarters, leaders were asking themselves uncomfortable questions about honor and duty. So we will make our stand here, Admiral Choi continued. Not because we can win, but because it is right. Not because we are strong, but because they need someone to care. The galaxy will remember this day, and maybe, just maybe, it will choose to be better. The transmission ended. The human fleet, 8 small ships against an empire, prepared for its final battle. And then space lit up with the arrival of Impossible Hope. The first ships to arrive were Zenthari battlecruisers, their golden hulls gleaming as they dropped out of hyperspace. Commander Keith Val's voice filled the communication channels. This is the Zenthari 3rd Battle Group. We come to honor the call of duty. Behind the Zenthari came Mechlon merchant warriors, their practical ships bristling with weapons. Trade Captain Vex 9's transmission was characteristically blunt. This is a bad business model. We're here to fix it. But the real surprise was the fleet that followed. Dozens of ships from species Admiral Choi had never heard of. The Aquari brought medical vessels. The Chitauri contributed their data warfare ships. The Thalari, crystal singers like the Velrani, arrived with vessels that looked like flying cathedrals. Dr. Xunghwan-O's voice reached them from a converted Corvan bioship. Admiral Choi, meet the coalition of small voices. You taught us that we don't have to accept injustice just because we're small. Today we're not small anymore. Even the mysterious Void Touched appeared, their dark ships materializing like ghosts. Their telepathic message was simple. The silence was broken. We choose to hear. War leader Thekmore found himself facing not 8 human ships, but a coalition fleet of over 200 vessels. Species that had been enemies for centuries were flying together. The forgotten and the oppressed had united under the example of human courage. This is impossible, he transmitted to his fleet. They cannot work together. They hate each other. No, replied Admiral Choi. They hate injustice. Today that's enough. The battle that followed changed galactic history. The coalition fleet used tactics developed by the Human Velrani Alliance, hybrid technologies that combine the best of multiple species. Synthari honor met Meklon practicality, met Chitauri precision, met human determination. The Korthak found themselves facing weapons and strategies they could not understand or counter. Engineer Youngsu. Nam watched in amazement as Thalari crystal singers worked with Velrani engineers to create resonance weapons that could shatter Korthak armor. Meklon traders shared their best military technology freely, something that had never happened before. Even the proud Zenthari followed tactical plans created by primitive humans. The World Render managed one shot before the coalition fleet overwhelmed it. The planet-cracking beam struck Velros's northern pole, splitting crystal formations and sending shockwaves across the world. But the planet held together, and the weapon was destroyed before it could fire again. Speaker Krista 9 stood in her cathedral as the shockwaves passed, feeling her world's pain, but also its survival. Around her, Velrani sang songs of joy and gratitude that reached into space itself. The Korthak fleet, faced with impossible odds and technologies they could not understand, broke and fled. War leader. Thekmore's final transmission was bitter. This is not over. The galaxy will remember this interference. Yes, Admiral Choi replied. It will. 1 year later, Captain Una Park stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Harmony, a ship built with technologies from 17 different species: human engineering, Velrani crystal work, Zenthari metallurgy, Meklon efficiency, and contributions from a dozen minor species had created something unprecedented, a truly galactic collaboration. New distress signal. Captain, reported her communications officer, unknown species outer spiral region. They're asking for help. Una looked at her mixed crew, humans working alongside Velrani, Zenthari officers serving under Aquari commanders, Chitauri and Meklon sharing data freely. The coalition of small voices had grown into something larger, something that had changed the very nature of galactic civilization. Set course for the signal, she ordered. Best speed. Behind them, 16 more ships followed, the coalition's rapid response fleet. When someone called for help now, the galaxy answered. The age of looking away while innocence suffered was over. On Velros, now a thriving world where crystal cities grew beside human settlements, Admiral Choi and Speaker Krista 9 stood before a memorial made of human steel and Velrani crystal. The names of the